Can a little disobedience be harmful to a person and even harmful to many other people? The answer is yes. A little disobedience can be very costly to other people. You have heard the proverb, curiosity killed the cat. The proverb warns that being inquisitive, curious about other people's affairs may get you into trouble. This morning in our text, we are going to see a young teenage girl who was curious. Her curiosity caused her to disobey God, disobey her parents. Her curiosity killed an entire city, and many women and children were taken away captive. Today we will see the story of a girl named Dinah. Her story is in the book of Genesis. We'll start at 33 and continue into 34. In the middle of the story of Jacob and his brother Esau, we have an interruption to cover the story of Leah's teenage daughter born to Jacob. Her name was Dinah. They called her Dinah. We call Dinah. She is the equivalent of a girl raised in a Christian home today, raised to obey the Lord and not to associate with unbelievers, but her curiosity about the unbelievers got her into trouble. The girl in our text was curious about how things were in the world outside. She wanted to establish some kind of contact with that world, even though she knew it was forbidden. For whatever reason, people are attracted to what is forbidden. Even young children are attracted to what is forbidden. Tell them not to touch something, they will do anything, everything they can to touch it. The only time I smoked cigarette, when was it was forbidden by my parents. And when they gave me the permission, I was not interested anymore. I quit. So her story starts with verse 18 of chapter 33. Then Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padam Aram, and he pitched his tent before the city. And he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel. The tent of her father just happened to be pitched nearby the city of Shechem. Jacob and the rest of the family were very careful to avoid all contact with the city and with the people of that city. But this did not prevent Dinah from occasionally glancing into that direction. She was curious. She might have seen the girls of that city walking around in their gorgeous oriental dresses. Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, felt bored. And she had good reason to be. Life in a goatskin tent did not offer much attraction to a girl that age. And she was of the marriageable age, over 14, 15 years old. Her parents were much older. And she might have been the only girl with a bunch of brothers and half-brothers. Her entire life had been nomadic, constantly on the move. Her family continued to wander until they arrived here at the city of Shechem. And Jacob made a bad decision here. He decided to purchase a parcel of land from those people. That was not God's will. He had no business doing that. And there will be consequences for his little disobedience to God. We read in verse 1, "Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman, and he spoke kindly to the young woman." Here we have what happened. The rest of the chapter will deal with the different reactions from the different people involved in this story. The story is about that girl Dinah, but she did not speak one single word. We do not hear her say anything. We don't hear anything from her. Also, another thing in this chapter, the name of God is not mentioned even once in the entire chapter. So Dinah, the daughter of Leah, went out to see the daughters of the land. Verse 1, the unbelieving girls. She was curious. I'm sure she was tempted by the devil to disobey not only her parents, who had said stay away from there, but also disobey God, who had said to remain separated from those people. It was not a good idea. Still, she pushed the conviction that she had to the side and followed the temptation. What a mistake. It is always dangerous to follow a temptation. I'm sure she knew what had happened to Rebekah and Sarah with Abimelech and with Pharaoh when their husband lied. They had been taken. She knew the stories. She was younger and she was alone. Dinah might have been proud of being a little daredevil. She was confident she would find a way out, so she thought. But she did not. She had hardly entered the city, started to nose around the stores in that place, that the prince, Shechem, the son of the king, Hamor, noticed her. And he went to see her. He talked to her. He invited her into his palace. How exciting for a young girl. That must have flattered her pride, and she willingly accompanied him. Not only did he convince her to accompany him in the castle, he also convinced her to lay down with him. Then people assume that the girl was raped against her will. The verb violated, verse 2, is very important. Most people interpret it as raped, and they feel sorry for the girl. The Hebrew text simply says he lay with her and humbled her by taking her virginity. Our English dictionary of synonyms has desecrated, defiled, dishonored, seduced as synonym for violated. It could mean also taken by force, but not necessarily, and not the case here. The word is clearly explained in 4 other verses of the Bible in this story. Verse 7, for instance, described it as a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter. Verse 13 says, defiled, losing her purity, being disgraced, but not raped. Verse 27 also says that she was dishonored, tarnished, stained, but not raped. Then verse 31 says that he treated our sister like a harlot. How do people treat harlots? Men ask for sex and convince them with money or with other things to say yes, as we see in Genesis chapter 38, the story of Judah, her half-brother. He asked Tamar, his daughter-in-law, for sex, and she said, what will you give me that you may come in to me? That's in the Bible. People do not rape harlots. They pay them. They pay for services rendered. Some Jewish rabbis imply that Dinah was looking for sex. I do not think so. That reveals their wrong attitude towards women. Most likely, Dinah was not raped. She was seduced. She was convinced to do it. There is no mention of her crying out rape. Yes, she was young. Yes, she was the victim of an older seducer, but she was not the victim of a rapist. Rapists do not fall in love with the people they rape. Rapists do not speak kindly to the people they rape. Rapists do not ask for them in marriage. We are not dealing with a rape, we're dealing with a seduction. Remember that. In verses 4 to 7, we have the reactions of different people. Verse 4, we have the reaction of the prince. He was in love. He asked his father to go get her to be his wife. He wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. He was not a rapist. Then you have the reaction, verse 5, of Jacob. His sons were in the field, so he simply held his peace. He did not know what to say. But we know how he was. He was a poor disciplinarian. Then we have the reaction of King Hamor in verse 6, the father of the guy. He went out to Jacob to speak with him about making arrangement for his son. He knew that his son was serious and he was in love with that girl. Then we have number 4, the reaction of the sons of Jacob in verse 7. They were grieved. They were angry because that guy had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by sleeping with their virgin sister. The story continues in verse 8. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife, and make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us. Take our daughters to yourself, so you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade in it, and acquire possessions for yourselves in it. Then Shechem said to her father and to her brothers, let me find favor in your eyes. Whatever you guys say to me, I will give. Ask me ever so much dowry and gift, and I will give according to what you say to me, but give me the young woman as a wife. He sure does not sound like a rapist. Here we have several proposals. First, you have the proposal of the king. He knew his son was serious, and he tried real hard to convince the Jews to merge together, to make marriages, to dwell together, and to trade possession. That was his proposal. Then we have the proposal of the prince. He was willing to pay as much dowry and gift as they will ask for her. He will do anything they say. But then we have the proposal of the two evil brothers of Dinah in verse 13. But the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor, his father, and spoke deceitfully because he had defiled Dinah, their sister. And they said to them, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us. But on this condition, we will consent to you, if you will become as we are. If every male of you is circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not heed us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone. Here we see the deceitful counter-offer of the sons of Jacob. Obviously, they were just like their father. Their father had been a deceiver all of his life. He had deceived his own father. Their aunt Rachel had deceived her own father. The kids were doing what they had seen the adults do around them. Children will copy what adults do, whether it is good or bad. They will not do what they say. So now the sons are doing just like the parents. The brothers said they will be willing to accept their offer to mix together on one condition: if every male were circumcised like them. Verse 15. This was blasphemy. Circumcision was a mark between God and his chosen people. It signified consecration to God. These people knew nothing about consecration nor about God. They were total heathen whom God had said to avoid. When the sons of Leah bargained with Hamor, Shechem's father, they never spoke to their sister to ask her opinion, to see if she wanted that kind of justice. Girls had no opinion. Dinah's brother seemed to be concerned with their own honor and maybe with all the plunder that these people have rather than their sister's feelings. In verses 18 to 24, the deceitful words of the sons of Jacob pleased both the king and the prince Shechem. In verse 18, the prince did not waste any time. In verse 19, he was in love. You've seen people in love, they get excited. He was excited. He ran to the gate of the city, and he tried to convince the men in the city to agree in verse 20. And in his argument, he uses 5 different things, verses 21 and 23. First one he used was peace. These people will be at peace with us. A second argument, commerce or business. They will trade with us. Third argument, the land. The land is large enough for them and for us. We will dwell together. His fourth argument, the girls. We will take their daughters as wife, and we will give them our daughters as wife. And his last one was the properties, their livestock, their property, their animals will be ours. Great argument. He played on their greed. He listed all the good things that they will get if they agree with this deal. But he buried in that list of good stuff the one condition, verse 22. Every man will have to be circumcised just like they are. Just a little price to pay for all that stuff. Just a little thing. Blinded by greed, by the thought of having all that stuff, all the stuff of those people, they reached a quick decision. They all agreed. It was unanimous, undisputed. All the men will get in line, and they were circumcised one by one. Not one said, no, I don't want to. The deal was done. All right, we are rich. Not so fast. Those people were deceitful. Look at what they did in verse 25. Now it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brother, each took his sword and came boldly upon the city and killed all the males. And they killed Hamor, the king, Shechem, the prince, his son, with the edge of the sword. And they took Dinah from Shechem's house, and they went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain, plundered the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their sheep, their oxen, their donkeys, what was in the city and what was in the field, and all their wealth. All their little ones, all their wives, they took captive, and they plundered even all that was in the houses. Anger is contagious. An angry person can easily convince someone else to be angry. Easy done. Dinah had only one brother, the story would be different. Things would be different. But she had two of them. And together they talked about what had been done to their little sister. Together they raged. Together they came up with a plan to avenge their sister. The more they talk, the angrier they became. The worse the story sounded, and the angrier they got. And they came up with a terrible plan. It was an act of disgrace. On the third day, when the men were sore, Simeon and Levi went to the city and murdered every male in the city. Verse 25. Not only the prince had to die, but also his dad, the king. Verse 26. And everyone else. That's more than getting even. Getting even would have meant to kill only the men who defiled their sister, the perpetrator. Everybody else in the city were innocent. But that was not enough for them. They killed everyone in the city. Not only that, they also took their little ones, took all the women as slaves, verse 29. They took all the animals, verse 28. They were certainly not led by the Spirit of God. They were in the flesh, and they went way beyond vengeance. After all that bloodshed, they took their sister, who was still in the palace, waiting for the arrangements to be made between the two fathers. They took her home. Next, we have the reaction of the father. Verse 30, then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites, the Perizzites. Since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I. But they said, should he treat our sister like a harlot? Here again we notice the weakness of character of Jacob in dealing with his sons. We see that he was a poor disciplinarian. There was no discipline in his home. What they had done was inexcusable. There was sin in Jacob's silence in failing to impose discipline, as well as today when parents fail to impose discipline, they sin against God. Jacob mildly rebuked Simeon and Levi for giving him a bad name, but did not rebuke them for the terrible sin they had committed. What sin? Well, they had deceived and lied to people. They had misused the covenant of circumcision to achieve their crime. They had murdered innocent people. They had taken innocent women and children as slaves. They had stolen those people's property, their animals. And they had endangered the rest of their family, not to mention that their anger itself was a sin. And yet, with this long list of sin, Jacob did not rebuke them. He was just upset. He was just worried. And look at what he said. He said, I, me, my, 8 times. Who is he looking for? Who is he concerned with? He said, others will hear what you have done and will attack me and kill me. That's what he was worried. He was more concerned about himself than the character and the conduct of his sons. Their action was not dealt with properly. Jacob did not agree with what they had done, but he never forgot what they had done. We will see later on his deathbed, giving the blessing to his children. This deed will come back. It was never forgotten. In verse 30, we are told what really scared Jacob. He was terrified that the bordering peoples, they would gather together and come against him and kill him and wipe his family because of the son's action. So he gathered his family, all his stuff, and hurried away. They took off. Now, people shift the blame all over the place in this story. Some people blame Dinah. She should not have disobeyed her parent. She should not have disobeyed God. She should not have ventured into the enemy territory. She should have controlled her curiosity and stay home. Others, they blame Shechem. He should not have tried to seduce this young girl and impress her with his royal position and possessions. He should have asked her father to make arrangement for marriage before convincing her to have sex with him. Others blame the 2 brothers. They should have been able to ask God for wisdom for the proper way to handle this situation without so many people getting hurt. They should have asked God to help them control their anger. Others blame Jacob. They say that the whole thing happened because of his little disobedience. He was not where he was supposed to be. He had lost the vision of God. They say his one step of disobedience intensified into this major mess here. Jacob stepped out of God's will by doing his own thing. God had said to him, Genesis 31, I am the God of Bethel. Return and go back to the land of your father and to your family. Jacob did not obey that. He did not return to Bethel. Instead, he decided to go to Shechem and pitch his tent there, even to buy a parcel of land from those people. Verse 19. He thought it would be okay. What's a small disobedience? But let me tell you about a small disobedience. It can lead to big disasters. Sometimes people say, how did I get into such a mess? Well, it started with a tiny little disobedience. It started by slowly moving away from God's plan in your life. It starts with incomplete obedience. When you are disobedient in small things, you open the door for disobedience to big things and big troubles. Partial obedience to God has been responsible for much trouble that happened to many Christian families. Be careful of little disobedience or incomplete obedience. So many people in the Bible have paid terrible prices for the little disobedience. Remember a guy named Achan, Joshua 7. His little disobedience, he stole some clothes and a piece of gold. And that caused the death of many soldiers, eventually his own death. He was stoned for the last time. Anyway, it is not important to try to find out who was to blame. They can all be blamed. What is important is to realize that we may fall victim to cruel events because of the little disobedience of those whom we love. Those who love us can get us into big trouble by their little disobedience. Bottom line is, no blessing was given to these two, Simeon and Levi. When you get to chapter 49, Jacob blessing all of his kids. When he arrived to these two, he cursed them, cursed their anger and their action. Little too late, I'm afraid. How gracious of God, you may say, to make the tribe of Levi, the murderer here, the priestly tribe. Well, God do not punish the children for the sins of the father. But still Jacob could not stay there, and they had to move. Now, what happened to Dinah? We are not told if she ever married or remained single. Most likely, she remained single. In the eyes of those men, she was damaged good. All we know is that over 20 years later, Dinah's name is included in the list of those who moved to Egypt, where her half-brother Joseph was the governor. Genesis 46 lists all 66 people who made the journey, and Dinah is listed among them. Still alone, still childless. Once in Egypt, she could have gotten married and have a family. We do not know. We are not told. I do not think so. Yes, indeed, a little disobedience can be very costly to a lot of people. In our text, Dinah, a young teenage girl, made a terrible decision. She was curious about the world around her. Her curiosity killed an entire city. We have established earlier that just about every person mentioned in that story share the blame. We cannot only blame Dinah for all the damages. Let's focus for a moment on the little disobedience of this young girl. What trouble really was caused by her disobedience? Let me mention 8. Number 1, it caused her to be defiled. As a young teenage girl, she was no longer a virgin. Her little disobedience caused her to be seduced by an unbeliever and lose her purity and her virginity. Number 2, it caused the deceitful misuse of the circumcision, the covenant of the Lord, by the 2 brothers. The covenant was profane, perverted, being applied to unbelievers. Should never have been done. Number 3, it caused the pain and the death of all the adult men in the city of Shechem. Number 4, her little disobedience caused the captivity of the women and the children of the city who were taken as slaves. Number 5, it caused the total destruction of the city of Shechem. It was never rebuilt. Number 6, it caused her dad to fear the retaliation on the family from the inhabitants surrounding the region, Canaanite, Perizzite. Number 7, it caused the departure, the flight of the family of Jacob as if they were criminals. They had to get out of there. And number 8, it caused the loss of a blessing for the 2 brothers, Levi and Simeon. Instead, they were cursed by their father for being instruments of cruelty, it says. Chapter 49, verse 5. We also see in this story the responsibility of fathers. They are responsible to discipline their children. Whether a child has just gotten out without permission or have committed terrible crime, he or she should be disciplined. That's what God says. That's what he wants. We see the weakness of Jacob as a father because he did not speak up and did not discipline his 2 sons and did not stop their deceitful plan and did not put his foot down. All those terrible things followed. As mentioned, in a sense, he was as guilty as his daughter Dinah. Things could have been handled differently. Nobody had to die. Now let me ask you, how could things have been handled differently? Think about it in your mind. How would you have made things differently? Now, for us, looking back, and we see God's view on this situation, Leviticus 18 deals with sexual sin. The chapter ends with verse 30, and it says, I'll read it to you, therefore you shall keep my ordinance, God says, so that you do not commit any of these abominable customs which were committed before you, that you do not defile yourselves by them. They were told by God not to be defiled, not to defile themselves by them. Then Deuteronomy 22 is worse. It deals with the law of marriage. It deals with rape and sex outside of marriage. And there it says in verses 28, 29, very clear. I'll read it to you. If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, and he seizes her, and he lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her, and he shall not be permitted to divorce her all all of his days. Here's how it could have been handled differently. Rather than offer the circumcision to all males, it could have been offered only to Shechem, offering him to convert to Judaism, to leave his family and to move into the camp with his wife. Or they could have offered their sister to leave their camp, to move into the palace with this guy, turn her back on her family, and marry him. No one is killed. God is against murder. Or they could have killed only the perpetrator, Shechem, for his seduction or molestation of a young girl, as the Bible says. Let everybody else live, take their sister, and get out of the neighborhood. Anyway, the lesson is plain. A little disobedience might have terrible consequences. It is not a sin to be curious. But if the curiosity makes you disobey God in any way, it is a sin. Beware of little disobedience. I have seen little lies cause people terrible trouble. A bad decision, a little disobedience can be very costly. Next time, we will take the story of Judah, the son of Jacob, half-brother of Dinah. He has a weird story that people wonder why in the world is that story in the Bible. Consequences have a way to snowball and get bigger and bigger. In her case, Dinah, how far did the consequences go? Well, she came back in the camp, and she has 9 other half-brothers, and they're going to be talking in the camp. The gossipers, they are going to get a field day. You know what happened to Dinah? You know what happened to Dinah? Man, the guys had to kill. She had to live with this. Then the women and children who were taken by Simeon and Levi and brought into the camp, she had to face them. They are here without their father because of me. Them women are here without husband because of me. It's serious business. A tiny little disobedience that can go so far. For years, it is best not to start. Beware of little disobedience. They are, in my opinion, the most dangerous. A big disobedience, you're going to get busted. You're going to lose your wife. You're going to lose your job. You're going to end up in jail. Big disobedience. Then obviously, clear people stay away from those. But they don't stay away from the little one. And that's the dangerous one. So may the Lord be with you. May the Lord bless each and every one of you. May He keep your heart pure. May you avoid all those little disobedience. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.